I quit my corporate finance job and joined the United States Navy with the dream of becoming a SEAL. A decision, of course, that would forever change my life and set me on the path that I'm on today. So one day I was having a conversation with my twin brother. He's like, Brent, you've got to be kidding me. SEALs? Like, you're not being serious, right? I'll admit, I don't even really know much about it, but I know one thing. There is no way in hell you could ever do that. I mean, let's face it, aren't these guys supposed to be, I don't know, world-class warriors or something? Like really tough guys? You are not tough at all. Again, don't know much about it, but I'm pretty certain SEALs aren't nerdy, sniffly, emotional guys who cry during a Clorox bleach commercial. So let's just forget we had this conversation and stick with your nerdy finance job. Well, now I knew I had to do it, right? This is a true story. Literally a week later, I quit my job, and my buddy, whom I'd been training with, moved up here to Crested Butte, Colorado, where we trained for an additional 6 months for 5 hours a day at 10,000 feet altitude to get into the best physical condition that we could. Then in early 2000, joined the Navy, and after a couple months of basic training, was on a plane headed out to sunny San Diego, California, where we would begin our journey. I can tell you with exact certainty and clarity, like it was yesterday, that I have never been more nervous in my entire life than the day I stepped foot into the lobby of the Naval Special Warfare Training Center. But of course, at this point, there was no turning back. I had to be all in. It takes 18 months and costs about $3 million to acquire one SEAL. And that doesn't count the millions of dollars and years of arduous training once you actually make it to a team. That 18 months is broken into various segments. The first segment is 6 months long and called BUDS. Another one of our acronyms, it stands for Basic Underwater Demolition SEAL. BUDS has a 90% failure rate of highly capable candidates. None of us are extraordinary, exceptional individuals. We're just common people with an uncommon desire to succeed. So imagine those types of activities going on for months and months at a time. And then the irony is that the training just gets more difficult after that. So the third week of BUDS, the third week of this 18-month training pipeline is called Hell Week. And I assure you it's a lot worse than that sounds. It's designed to do one thing, simply weed out those not committed to the vision of becoming a SEAL. You do not sleep for an entire week. You run the equivalent of multiple marathons while wet and sandy inside and out. This is called getting a sugar cookie. It sucks because the instructors make a concerted effort to ensure you get the sand on the inside of your clothing so that it strips the flesh off your body as you run. It's like wearing sandpaper inside out. You swim dozens of miles in the open, frigid ocean. You run with heavy logs, heavy boats, heavy backpacks. You run the obstacle course multiple times a day. Endless calisthenics, brutal beatings. All while battling severe bruising, cuts, lacerations, stress fractures, cellulitis, broken bones, things that seemed uncomfortable or things that seemed almost seemingly impossible to become a part of your everyday life. And that winning mindset of persistence and determination reminds me of a great quote by Martin Luther King Jr. that says, "If you can't fly, you run. And if you can't run, you walk. If you can't walk, you crawl. But no matter what, you keep moving forward."
What if you're leaving out responsibility? And the answer might be, well, maybe you're leaving out the meaning of life. That's what it looks like to me. It's like, here you are, suffering away. What makes it worthwhile? Rights? It's almost impossible to describe how bad an idea that is. Responsibility. That's what gives life meaning. It's like lift a load. Then you can tolerate yourself, right? Because look at, you're useless, easily hurt, easily killed. Why should you have any self-respect? That's the story of the fall. Pick something up and carry it. Make it heavy enough so that you can think, yeah, well, useless as I am, at least I could move that from there to there. Well, what's really cool about that is that when I talk to these crowds about this, the men's eyes light up. And that's I've seen that phenomenon because I've been talking about this mythological material for a long time. And I can see when I'm watching crowds, people, their eyebrows lift, their eyes light up because I put something together for them. And that's what mythological stories do. So I'm not taking responsibility for that. That's what the stories do. So I say the story and people go click, 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 and their eyes light up. But this responsibility thing, that's a whole new order of this, is that young men are so hungry for that, it is unbelievable. people. And one of the things I've been talking to some of the people who've been running for the Conservative leadership in Canada, and I've been talking to them about, well, the difficulties they have communicating with young people, because Conservatives, what the hell are they going to sell to young people, right? Because being Conservative is something that happens when you're older. They can sell responsibility. No one's selling it. And the thing is, for men, there's nothing but responsibility. I was watching The Simpsons the other day. I watched the first Simpsons episode, and I deconstructed it. And so it's really interesting. So what happens in the first Simpson episode is that it's Christmas, and Homer and Marge are going to buy some Christmas presents, but Homer doesn't get his Christmas bonus. And so he's absolutely crushed by that. And that actually is a recurring theme in The Simpsons, where Homer loses his job or something like that, or can't make enough money. He's completely crushed. Even though he's kind of useless, bumbling, laughing fool of a guy, the thing that gives that show its soul is that he's still oriented towards his family. That's what makes him honorable, is that foolish as he is, he's decided to adopt responsibility for his family and to try to bear that. He's a holy fool. He's not a complete fool. And it's so interesting watching the story because he suffers dreadfully as a consequence of not being able to fulfill his responsibility. Well, that's for men. Women have their sets of responsibilities. They're not the same because they're complicated, because women, of course, have to take primary responsibility for having infants at least, but then also for caring for them. They're structured differently than men. For biological necessity, even if it's not a psychological issue, and it's also partly a psychological issue. Women know what they have to do. Men have to figure out what they have to do. And if they have nothing worth living for, then they stay Peter Pan. And why the hell not? Because the alternative to valued responsibility is impulsive, low-class pleasure. And you saw that in the Pinocchio story, right? That's Pleasure Island. Why lift a load if there's nothing in it for you? That's another thing that we're doing to men that's a very bad idea. And to boys. You're pathological and oppressive. Fine then, why the hell am I going to play? If that's the situation, if I get no credit for bearing responsibility, you could bloody well be sure I'm not going to bear any. But then, you know, your life is useless and meaningless, and you're full of self-contempt and nihilism, and that's not good. That's what I think's going on at a deeper level with regards to men needing this direction. A man has to decide that he's going to do something. He has to decide that. Yeah, well, you know, partly what you're trying to do in the future authoring process is say, okay, well, what's your highest value, right? It's the star. What are you aiming for? You can decide, man. But, you know, there's some criteria. It should be good for you. It should be good for you in a way that facilitates you moving forward. Maybe it should be good for you in a way that's also good for the family and the community. It should cover the domain of life. I mean, there's constraints on what you should regard as a value. But within those constraints, you have the choice. You have choice. Well, the thing is that people will carry a heavy load if they get to pick the goddamn load. And they think, well, I won't carry any load. It's like, okay, fine, but then you're like the sled dog that doesn't have a sled to pull. You're just going to tear pieces out of your own legs because you're bored. People are pack animals. They need to pull against a weight. And that's not true for everyone. It's not true particularly, say, for low conscientious people. I mean, maybe they're open and creative or extroverted and some other things. But for the typical person, they'll eat themselves up unless they have a load. This is why there's such an opiate epidemic among dispossessed, white, middle-aged guys who are unemployed in the US. It's like they lose their job, they're done. They despise themselves. They develop chronic pain syndromes and depression. And the chronic pain is treated with opiates. It's like, that's what we're doing. That's what it looks like to me. And it's so interesting to watch the young men when you talk to them about responsibility. They're so goddamn thrilled about it. It just blows me away. It's like, really? That's the counterculture. Grow the hell up and do something useful. Really? I could do that? Oh, I'm so excited by that idea. No one ever mentioned that before. It's like rights, 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 rights. It's appalling. And I feel that that's deeply felt by the people who are coming out to listen to these sorts of things too. They've had enough of that. And they better have, because it's a non-productive mode of being.